Hey everybody, John Michael Salvato here. I was going to start today's show by asking if you've ever known somebody who just sucks the life out of the room, but I was a little bit scared, to be frank, that coming up this close to Halloween, all of my exes would rise from the grave and think it was Orgy Tuesday. So instead of that, let me just say that we're going to be talking about one of the more subtle issues that can plague our lives, from those who do it without realizing to those who've built crumbling empires in places like Salem and Mount Vesuvius. Psychic vampirism, spiritual predators, and cancel culture in the spiritual community is a real problem. And we're going to talk about that and its roots in systemic racism when we come back. And welcome back. As I said, I'm John Michael Salvato, your host, and with me is my beautiful co-host, the herbalist, magical practitioner, artisan, and storyteller extraordinaire, Andrea Savar. And before we begin, let's begin by thanking you guys in advance for liking and subscribing and sharing our programs with those that you think will vibe with us. Today's guest is a returning guest that we're really excited. I know Andrea and I are excited, but so many of you have messaged us. I better turn on comments too, or have messaged us that you're also very excited that she's back with us. She's a traditional curandera. She's a skillful bruja in the tradition of the Canary Islands, an initiated espiritista, a divinator, wellness counselor, herbalist, healer, energy worker, and an extraordinary artist, owner of YourSpiritMaster.com. Please welcome to the program, Carolina Gonzalez. Carolina, it is so awesome to have you with us on the show again. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I am so excited to be back.
And Andrea, thanks for putting up with the craziness this morning. I know it's one of those times that it's just. We're all good. We're good.
I'm so glad to see Carolina too, because I just adore everything she does. So I'm excited to hear what she has to say on this topic and just everything.
So and if you guys that are watching, remember this is your show too. So comment. Feel free to comment, ask questions, dive in. I'm going to see if I change the layout of our screens. There we go. If we move there, perfect. Okay, so that way I can put the questions on the bottom of the screen, and we won't have to go on top of Catalina or Andrea. Let me see. Somewhere on here I could take off our names so that we have more screen space. There we go. And so today's topic, guys, let's really kind of dive in. The things that kind of brought this up, for those that are watching that may not be familiar, is that we started to see a lot of cancel culture going on. And so to me, I started to think, this is a form of psychic vampirism. And at the same time, people were telling me, well, so-and-so in this area and so-and-so in this area just seem to just like suck every bit of energy that I have out of the room. And I don't know what to do when I'm around them. And so we want to talk about, how you could tell if somebody, and unfortunately, the reality is that sometimes people who present themselves as powerful brujas or witches or practitioners, what they're really doing is they're feeding off your energy, and that's their real skill. And so let's first of all talk about that, about what that is. I know that both Andrea and Catalina both had experiences, as have I, with these kind of people. Let's tell people from our perspective what psychic vampirism really is and what it's all about.
I know.
Nothing like starting with a loaded question. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, a psychic vampire is someone, as you said, who sucks the life and the energy and actually the lack or the prosperity out of someone. or even out of a family. It doesn't need to be just one person. This needs to be fought exactly as curses or hexes or evil eye is fought, with hex-breaking magic, but with very strong magic. The problem here is that it's very difficult to protect yourself from this kind of people without actually doing some kind of attack, because just protection magic very often won't work. And in my experience, this is something that it's better when it's handled by a professional. This is very dangerous magic, just exactly as it happens with parasitic entity activity or cursing. And it requires that someone from outside who has a really strong spiritual protection works for you.
Yeah, and I mean, I can say from my own experience, when I had something for years kind of happening, when you're in the thick of it, and for me, I was someone who could help other people do it, but at that particular moment in time, because it had taken me to a point where I was very ill physically, you need someone from the outside to kind of step in and do it their particular way. And interestingly, for me at that particular point in time, I had someone who came in and helped me, who approached it from a completely different way that I had always approached it, or that my grandmothers had approached it, and it helped tremendously. When you're really in it, and you're you do need that outside help for sure. So
Absolutely. And this is no joke.
No.
This is not, I'm having a headache, or I'm having a bad day, or I'm having a bad week. This can make you sick. This can make you kill yourself. This can make you commit crimes. And yes, this can kill you.
Well,
I
yeah.
don't like sugarcoating this kind of thing
Mm-mm.
and saying that it's just bad energy. No, it can, of course, it's not like that every single time, but it happens.
I think we also have to remember too that you know, one of the real keys that that you both actually brought up is that we need that outside intervention, because when you suffer, this is like an infection.
Yes.
Because it's an infection on the spiritual level, and when you suffer a parasitic infection in your body, then that depletes your energy, that depletes your quite often you're not able to really see the full scope of that infection. And so it's really important that we bring a third person in who has that experience, just as you would go to a traditional physician and say, help me get rid of this parasite, because that's what that type of infection is. And it doesn't just mean, okay, I recognize the manic meatball of Mount Vesuvius is a psychic witch. Well, and she's a psychic vampire. So I'm going to stop watching her videos, or I'm going to stop attending. No, that once the infection is there, you don't just say, okay, I don't want parasites anymore. You have to now treat the infection that you've opened yourself up to. And we don't always do that mindfully. We don't always do that with awareness. So Carolina, as somebody who people can turn to, and who can that can be that mindful and watchful eye to help them. Talk a little bit about that this isn't just okay. So now I come to Carolina and I say, I think that there's an issue with a psychic vampire. There's divination on your part. There's that expertise on your part, and the person has to play a role as well. Talk a little bit about that, if you don't mind.
Actually, when a customer comes to me with this kind of problem, I do believe them, because 99% of times they're right. Nobody feels like that with no reason. Nobody feels they're being cursed with no reason. There is certain people who have mental illnesses and who can be suffering from paranoia. Yes, but you can read that if you have experience enough. When you read their emails, if someone is mentally sound or not.
Mm-hmm.
If I think they're not, of course, I'm going to, recommend psychiatric help.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't do actually divination to check if they're telling me the truth, because first, I do charge. So nobody's going to spend that amount of money just on their thoughts.
Right.
Nobody does that. And the truth is, it's one case out of 1,000 who didn't need that work, and the rest do need it. So what's the point of making them spend more money on divination?
Mm-hmm.
When there is actually no need? I go straight to spell work, because actually, for me, this is an emergency work.
It is.
So the sooner it is solved, and actually I cannot attend customers immediately. They have a waiting list. So the sooner they are attended, the better, because the thing is, things can get worse very quickly.
Sure.
And I take this very seriously. I may ask questions, but I actually ask questions about how does it manifest in their lives, so I can adjust or customize the work to their specific needs, because this kind of infection, as you said very well, preys on different areas of their lives depending on the weaknesses of the person. For some people, it turns into self-harm. For some people, it turns into destruction of their relationships. For some people, it turns into losing every prospect of prosperity. Mm-hmm. And that will need to have a basic work customized to their specific needs.
Excellent.
So it can fight the specific infection that the vampire has created.
Right, right.
And that's very much the process.
And I'm kind of thinking too, like I know you mentioned this in your, when you were writing in your blog, because you wrote a really wonderful piece about this. And I remember you stating that, there's a difference between just someone who maybe is draining your energy on a daily basis, but might not be super aware of what they're doing. Like, I don't put them on the same category as what is a very significant psychic vampire attack. Like, there's different kind of levels of that. Do you know what I mean? So I don't want people to think that there's this false positivity or false, like, oh no, sometimes we have this tendency to say, well, if you're just a positive person, then or just surround yourself with positive people. And so there's this kind of shaming around people who might have this maybe tendency to drain a little bit. But I don't necessarily think that's the same thing as what we're talking about with psychic vampirism that's very specific. Or I'm having a hard time articulating this. I did not have enough coffee this morning. Do you well, I'll let you guys talk.
Carolina, go ahead and respond, because I think we were going to say the same thing about that.
The worst offenders when it comes to psychic vampirism hide among the toxic positivity people.
I know. It's that
because
white.
The prey is there.
Yeah.
People who want to believe that just having crystals and doing yoga will fix everything are the perfect prey of these vampires. And I tell you, they are the largest amount of my customers when it comes to this case. People who have been prey of the positivity culture, which is incredibly toxic and incredibly colonial.
Yes.
Yeah. And it leaves you so open.
What?
It leaves you so wide open to attack when that's your approach to your spirituality.
Absolutely, absolutely, because they actually develop bonds with teachers. You cannot. My husband says we clean the blood when it comes to this kind of work.
Yep.
Because we're the ones who comes after the crime has been committed to clean the work and restore the order and fix this situation. And yes, as you said, Andrea, some people do send evil eye almost unconsciously.
Yes.
But those people, you know, you can protect yourself with a good feet amulet or something like that.
Well, that was the thing. Like
Just, you know, in Canadian curanderismo, we do this sign against people.
Yeah. And we have been, you know, Persian culture that Esfand.
They can only cause you, you know, a headache.
Exactly. And like we have the Esfand, and I don't know if you guys, if you use that as well. Esfand is the wild rue. It's little seeds that we burn. And that's kind of for the more minor, like or just clearing out or clearing space. Yeah.
But that thing has no purpose.
Yeah, no.
The psychic vampire has a purpose.
Yes, exactly. It's very, very.
The psychic vampire calculates.
Yeah.
The psychic vampire does not face someone like me.
No.
Because they know who they're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
And they measure strengths with other practitioners. And they go to prey because they are predators.
Mm-hmm.
That's not accidental evil eye or someone with really negative energy who is very angry or very depressed or very sick who affects everyone around them. That is a calculated effort to feed of the energy of other people to gain fame, money, whatever, power over other people, sexual power as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is calculated. That's the difference. That person is a criminal.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
That is not just negative energy. That is, this person fits a profile of weakness, of trauma, of vulnerability. So I'm going to take everything this person has. And when they're done, I jump onto the next one.
Yeah, we've seen that before.
You know, I think one of the things that folks that I challenge folks to think about is we live in a world in which one of the things that makes me the most nuts is seeing the American pagan culture or the pagan American culture so heavily influenced by television and movies and fiction. You know, they all think that magic is done the way that it was done in The Craft or Buffy the Vampire Slayer or all of this, but they don't stop to think about if you're gonna look to our mythos, to stories, to fiction, and try and extract the wisdom that often lies at the root of some of these stories. Think about the root of the Dracula story. You know, the vampires of old, the Nosferatu, the vampires of lore didn't go for the powerful person. They didn't go for the person who understood who they were. They went for the vulnerable. And so it's exactly what you're saying. They look for that weak link, for that person who's hungry, for that person who wants affection or intimacy or knowledge. And that's an open door. And so I think we have to also,
because they're preying on the ignorance.
Yeah. It's criminal.
Of Western culture when it comes to magic.
Yeah.
That's what I said. They don't face people like me.
And that brings us
people who believe in exactly what you said, that magic comes from TV references.
Yeah. And that brings us to really what I thought would be the second part of our discussion today, which is going to be to talk about sort of the connection that exists between psychic vampirism and colonialism and the violence that comes from that. We will discuss that when we come back after a message from the Charter for Compassion, which I think in this moment in time is so critical for each of us to think about when it comes to cancel culture and when it comes to protecting ourselves and healing that colonialism in our traditions. More on that when we come back.
The principle of compassion lies at the heart of all religious, ethical, and spiritual traditions,
calling us always to treat all others as we wish to be treated ourselves.
Compassion impels us to work tirelessly to alleviate the suffering of our fellow creatures.
To dethrone ourselves from the center of our world and put another there. to honor the inviolable sanctity of every single human being.
Treating everybody without exception.
With absolute justice, equity, and respect.
It is also necessary in both public and private life
to refrain consistently and empathically from inflicting pain.
To act or speak violently out of spite, chauvinism, or self-interest.
To impoverish, exploit, or deny basic rights to anybody.
And to incite hatred by denigrating others, even our enemies.
Is a denial of our common humanity.
We acknowledge that we have failed to live compassionately.
And that some have even increased the sum of human misery in the name of religion.
We therefore call upon all men and women to restore compassion
to the center of morality and religion.
To return to the ancient principle
that any interpretation of scripture
that breeds violence,
hatred,
or disdain
is illegitimate.
To ensure that youth are given accurate and respectful information
about other traditions, religions, and cultures.
To encourage a positive appreciation of cultural
and religious diversity.
To cultivate
an informed empathy with the suffering of all human beings,
even those
regarded as enemies.
We urgently need to make compassion a clear, luminous, and dynamic force in our polarized world.
Rooted in a principled determination to transcend selfishness.
Compassion can break down political, dogmatic, ideological, and religious boundaries.
Born of our deep interdependence, compassion is essential for human relationships and to a fulfilled humanity.
It is the path to enlightenment and indispensable in the creation of a just economy and a peaceful global community.
And so we're back. You know, I think really that just cuts to the core of what we're all about, and cuts to the core. Earlier today, I saw someone on social media, a white girl, who was publicly shaming somebody for their mental illness struggle and for their financial struggle, and said in their post, you know, I've helped this person financially before, and now he's saying that if you can't help me financially, I'm really embarrassed, but that's what I need most right now. And this is a practitioner, spiritual practitioner, who allowed the American culture to shame him so often into not charging what he should be charging for his services, into feeling like he has to buy into what the majority culture says is acceptable. And earlier in the week, we saw somebody from one of the other, white privilege traditions saying, you know, if you're not part of an initiatory coven-oriented rite, then you're not really practicing witchcraft. You know, this cancel bullshit. And at the end of the day, just as, to me, it's a form of psychic vampirism, because you're disempowering somebody, you're sucking away their power, so that you can keep them oppressed under your thumb. And when we look at so many of these psychic vampires, now I understand we've had them in our cultures as well, outside the European culture. There's been psychic vampires, everywhere. But what we're seeing in this moment, to me, feels like a lot of connection between the vampirism and the cancel culture, and all of that comes down to this colonialism, to this whitewashing of all traditions, so that we can suck up and steal something from everybody. And then it just becomes the shopkeep, and just becomes the one with the most money to have the most advertising, who gets to cash in, while they keep everybody else oppressed underneath them. Any thoughts on that from you guys? We got a comment in here while you're talking.
Well,
just describe colonialism.
It's violence.
What colonialism is, to suck off the blood of another culture.
Mm-hmm.
That is what Western culture has done to Black people, to Central and to Indigenous people in America, to everyone who has been there to be oppressed. It's just,
remember,
you suck the culture, you suck the finances, you suck the labor, you suck the economy, you suck the art, you suck the philosophy, you suck the business, you suck the agriculture, everything. So they are left with nothing, and they can be cornered and destroyed and slaughtered and just murdered. Yeah.
Andrea.
Oh, I was going to say, this reminded me of when you were on last time and you had that mic drop moment when you said, it was just so powerful, when you said, if it's not healing, it's stealing. And that was just like, boom. It's exactly what it is. I mean, you summed it up so beautifully when you said that. It was just, if you're not, and I think this kind of ties in also to Gregory's comment as well. How can you differentiate a psychic vampire from someone who genuinely wants to help? And I do think right there, if there isn't a healing aspect that is genuine and grounded and very real, beware that it isn't stealing. And that's on many different levels, on an energy level, on a physical level, on a global level. And we see this over and over, unfortunately, in this particular culture.
My answer for him is trust your instinct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people sound genuine, act genuine, live genuine. It shows. It's not difficult to tell truth from lie here.
I think
vain, pompous, self-serving, prone to fighting and drama. There are a lot of signs that you can get from, basic psychology that show what is a narcissist.
And when you own your own power, first of all, when you reclaim your own power, then
you don't need anyone else.
Focus is on you. Yeah, you know that it's limitless. And so, Gregory, own your power when you come in. That's part of what we do to protect ourselves. That's the big non-secret out there, is that the biggest thing you could do to protect yourself is to own your power and to recognize nobody can take your power without your permission. So if you go into a relationship, go into that relationship mindful that I am not giving permission to anyone to take from me that which is not theirs. And that's the first step. But when you're in a vulnerable position, when you're hurting, you're needing something from someone, you go to someone for help. If you're not sure if maybe they did begin to abuse you, they began to steal from you, to victimize you, then that's when I say you go to somebody like Catalina and say, maybe you're not sure, but something feels off. And let the practitioner who's had that experience do what they do and what they do best to ensure that you're protected.
You just have to say, I do not have the strength to fight this. Yeah. And I need someone to help me. Not everyone has the strength, because you just said it before. When people are constantly disempowered, there comes to a point where they don't actually have the power or the strength to just fend off that vampirism. And that's when, the professional comes in, because we do have this resource that they don't have, because it's our job to not be disempowered.
Yeah. And I think one of the things too is youth plays a major role in that as well. I mean, they tend to go for people who are young or not completely in their power yet, because they are, young adults, or they're just not sure where they really stand yet. They don't have that power yet, or they do, they just haven't tapped into it entirely. And so I think that's another thing too, is especially for all of these, and I hate the term baby witch. I'm just gonna throw that out. I just can't. But for these younger people that are starting to find their path through whatever means that may be, to be very mindful of what they're not only doing, but what they're tapping into. And when feelings don't line up with what is actually happening in the world, or when your gut is telling you something isn't right, and so in the back of your mind you kind of have that there, but the outside might look shiny and pretty, to really understand that dissonance between the two things that are happening, because that's your first sign, especially, and I'm just saying this more for young people, and I don't know if many are watching us, but that's one of the things for me. I see this often with youth, with
I'd like to share too, just something, just so that folks really understand. And Gregory, thank you for that question. But just so that you know that this isn't just about those that are just setting on the path. Although, as Andrea said, they are often the most vulnerable. But when this pandemic first began to rage in the United States, Andrea and I were talking about how important it is in some of the hardest hit communities here in our country to support those businesses that were most at risk of going under. And so it happened to be that we both looked at a particular, I don't believe there's coincidences, but we both looked at a particular practitioner, a house of hoodoo that our hearts just both felt drawn to, and who do wonderful work. And we said, individually, we said, we're going to support them. And rather than supporting them by asking for a service for ourselves, we said, we're going to support somebody that we love and support them because we love them. So we both happened to ask for working for one another.
We said
we sent each other a dressed candle, so that we could support this small business that really was struggling. And the idea behind it was that both of us also knew that we were in vulnerable positions too. Life affects every one of us. I don't care whether you've been practicing 10 years or 20 years or 50 years. Don't be afraid to reach out and say, this is the time that I need this working. And this is the time that I want, because think of those of us that are practitioners, not just as the experts that truly so many practitioners are, but think of us as the support. We are your tribe. We're the people that are there to have your back so that you don't have to carry that load by yourself all the time. And just as we do that for some of you, know that there's other people who do that for us. So this is a family affair. And the more that you do that, the less open you are to vampiric attacks, the less open that you are to the drama in your life. The more that there was a time in my life when everybody who ever had anything horrible to say to me, I felt like I had to go and do battle with them and shut them up and put them out of my misery. The more that you have the support of others, the easier it is to let that shit just roll off your back. Ellen says, finding the courage to ask for help, right on, can be hard when we're so deeply caught in a narcissistic relationship. I love your advice. I trust your gut. Even if we leave those relationships, we're still struggling when we aren't aware of the trauma it caused and really do need help. That is really, Catalina, talk to that, because a lot of times after we said, this is a toxic relationship, I have to pull myself out, that isn't when it's over. That's a lot of times when the vampirism just begins. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, to this person, I would say leaving the toxic relationship is just a first step. Now you need healing, and you need healing for a long time. And again, it's better if someone else is handling it. In Western culture, there is also this, in my opinion, too much emphasis on the do-it-yourself aspect of magic. As practitioners do have a place in society, just like a doctor has a place in society. If you have a headache, you take an aspirin, you don't go to the doctor for that. But if you have cancer, you don't try to operate your tumor at home in your living room table. You go to a doctor to get surgery or whatever treatment you need. And so it's the same. A toxic relationship requires a level of healing that you rarely can do yourself alone. And it's, in my opinion, the dark side of another aspect of colonial oppression, which is the every man for themselves culture. that is colonialism in itself. And it's completely false, and it weakens you. You are stronger with a bruja by your side. My customers are not just people who give me money so I do work for them. My customers are my proteges. When their families are sick, I pray for them. When they don't feel well, I pray for them, and I mean for free. When they go through a hard day, I email them, how are you, girl? The relationship is personal 100% of the time. Yeah, it's professional, of course, but it's not colonial. It's my expression of being professional. And that doesn't rely on every man for themselves. If you have been in a toxic relationship, lean on to someone who can be trusted and get healing. And when you get stronger, then you can move on.
Yeah, this bullshit about every man for themselves is often the words that come out of the mouths of the privileged men and women who have servants, housekeepers, yard keepers. So much for every man for themselves. Everybody's doing everything else for you. It comes from a place of privilege. And so can you talk to that, and Andrea talked to that, about the fact that it's also a sign of privilege to believe that that magic should always be offered for free. That we're wrong for charging for our services. That's colonialism. That's oppression. That's white privilege, because it comes from the place of the person who can afford, to do magic as a hobby. When there are those of us in whose family traditions you can trace all the way back to when we were the first doctors. We were the herbalists, the witches living on the hedge. We were the brujas and medicine men and medicine women who people turn to professionally. So if you don't have a problem paying for your doctor today, you sure as shit shouldn't have a problem paying for a brujo today for the same reason. You guys want to talk to that? Because I think that's another part of this vampirism, because the rich and wealthy shopkeepers, they can afford to criticize those who do the workings and charge for the workings, because they're in there selling tchotchkes and books.
Absolutely. If I had to do magic for free and had to do another job, I mean, it's impossible.
Yeah.
It's one or the other. What I do takes so much time, so much devotion, so many hours, literal hours of the day, that you just can't do another job and do this. I spend 10, 12 hours per day doing this. I do this 7 days a week. I have 10 days of holidays a year.
Well, and also,
even those days, I get, 10 emails a day. I know you're on holiday, but because life happens, and I totally get it. But we never have days off. We work on holidays, we work on Christmas, we work all the time. And it's fine because it's part of the job. But to tell me that I should not charge, or that I should, do this like a charity, it would require society to change completely. Because if I was supported by a community like a Catholic priest is supported by the Vatican, then I would be fine. Because I will have my house paid, I will have my meals paid, and I don't really require much else. But I don't have that kind of support, so I have to support myself. And I do have a family to support. And honestly, this is a subject that I wish we could do another show on exclusively, because the relationship of Western pagans and money is terrible. Terrible.
Well,
it is.
You got it. We will schedule that show.
I know.
Okay, you have a deal. Because this is a subject that I have to talk about with customers all the time. I have no problem at all with charging, and I have no problem at all with making good money, because with my good money, I do a lot of good As you said, I support local businesses, so I support my economy, which, as you know, Spain has been through a terrible quarantine and very long quarantine. So right now, supporting our local businesses is essential to keep jobs happening. I support all kinds of causes. I do charity. I rescue animals.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And
it's the use of money that becomes evil. It's the greed. It's the oppression.
It's our relationship to money, not money.
Yes, and that all can be changed and controlled because I am in control of how I spend my money.
Andrea, you were going to say something.
Oh no, I just completely agree. And also when we're doing things like using different types of plants and herbs, all of that takes a considerable amount of time and investment and work in our land and growing it in ways where we're being respectful of those plants, we're being respectful of that dirt, I'm not just going to go out and use a backhoe and plant 50 lines of like everything is done in a certain way and with a certain type of thoughtfulness. Yes. And so because
I'm sure that you too go around cleaning land that you don't own. We go harvesting. How many hours of that? Nobody pays me for that.
I was actually
I am the steward of the lands
exactly
where I grow and take herbs from.
And we were mentioning that I think I wrote something last night to John Michael. There's another author that he posts really wonderful things online, and Matt Oren posted something a few days ago about an offering that he made to that one of the ways that you can make an offering isn't simply putting something out just by rote, if you will, but part of that is for him, I think it was to Hecate, was that right, John Michael? Yeah. Right. And it was going and helping, because dogs are so important to her, helping with your local shelter or volunteering your time. And for me, like with water, something that's very important to me, when we go to the beach, we pick up trash. Like those are small offerings, and it's a way of really showing that they're your beloved. In so many ways.
We collaborate regularly with our local animal shelter. We replant the excess of seedlings in our gardening in local areas. And after doing this for 30-something years, I am actually an expert in endemic herbs.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I didn't need to, but it happened. And I have replanted, I don't know, maybe 200, 300 trees already. That I grew from seeds or seedlings or, bits of here and there.
You're a steward of the earth as well, because, folks who've watched you and followed you for some time see that, you've got this amazing rooftop garden as well, or at least I assume it's the roof. Yes. In my imagination of your world, it's the roof. And that's giving back to the earth. As Gwendolyn just said, Gwendolyn, by the way, when we do that show on our relationship to money, since you thanked us for bringing that topic up, you are more than welcome to be on the show with us at that time. Gwendolyn just said, living in consciousness. And if we don't do that, then I'll never be one to tell somebody that they're not a witch. For whatever they do, it's not my job, it's not my interest.
I'm so tired of that argument, and it's pointless. What's the point of saying to someone, you're not a witch?
Right. So, but I will say that one of the most authentic ways to live our cultures, I don't care what tradition you come from, is stewardship. Yes. And if you can't do that, then you need to just challenge yourself and say, what am I really doing? If I'm
Vampirism.
Dress up, if I'm doing dress up, dressing in period clothes that are no longer, the fashion, and putting on the goth makeup and having all the pretty, privileged ritual items on my beautiful altar that I have to just post on Instagram every 3 minutes. But if you're not taking care of the earth, then how are you connected to nature? If you're not taking care of one another, how are you connected to the cosmos? You know, you otherwise you're just being selfish. And I guarantee you that when you're selfish, there's that subtle form of psychic vampirism that's taking place, because all you're doing is taking.
No, and now that you mention Instagram, for example, you know, one of the easiest ways to suck your energy out of you is to keep you envying someone's Instagram posts.
Yeah.
What you post should inspire, make people think, you know, help, inform, educate, make someone laugh. It's fine, but I don't want to be envied at all. I had actually someone telling me once, "Oh, I wish I had your life." No, girl, no, you don't.
I've heard that too.
I am totally transparent with this. There is as much shit in my life. Sorry.
Not on this show.
Anyone's life. I mean, I've had mental illness. I am totally open about that. Very, very severe mental illness, trauma, pain, loss, death. I am chronically ill, and I am totally open with any of those topics any day, and you can check my Facebook, because one of the problems with cancel culture is that it's rooted in celebrity culture. I despise celebrity culture. I mean, and the fact that spiritual leaders, which is what we should be striving to be, are acting like celebrities is where I draw the line. I mean, where I just block you off and I don't give a shit. Sorry.
That's mild language on this show.
What you can say or what you can put on the table, I don't care when it comes to this celebrity posture. When you say enough, you know, because it's privilege, because it's colonial, because it's a way of being that I don't support. And one way to stop giving away your energy is to stop supporting celebrity pagans. Stop supporting. Cut their supply of attention, because you only have so much attention. And if you weren't given attention to the wrong people on Instagram, you would reclaim that for yourself and use it on your own improvement.
And
by extension, in the improvement of the entire world. Because what you do good for yourself, you do good for the universe.
Absolutely. And yeah, completely. When you're doing that work and when you're doing things like we were saying with the earth and with replanting, and that all takes a tremendous amount of time and focus and energy, but it's also sharing this incredible bond that you're connecting with other people, you're connecting with all of those spirits around you and all of that energy work around you, and your ancestors too, who are walking with you in all of that, for the most part. And I feel like all of that has so much life and vitality to it, that the more that you do that, and the more that that is the essence of what you do on a daily basis, the less likely you will to have those particular dreams.
Yes, absolutely.
If I can we're at the end of the hour, and so I just wanted to make sure that before we wrap up, I could just thank you so deeply. I know on behalf of both of us, although I'll let Andrea speak for herself, Catalina, I so appreciate what you bring to the table on so many levels. You know, we talked before the show that this connection, the waters there run so deeply, and I know that so many of the people that are watching really and sincerely feel that way. And so I am going to ask of the people that are watching, you know, that if you get value from this programming, and you get value from these guests, the reason that we put their their web address, for example, which I'm going to do right now, up on the screen, is so that you can show that appreciation, even if it's in the smallest way, even if it's in the smallest working And my commitment is to do the same thing. I've been really transparent about what's happened to us financially in the past year, and with the ceiling falling in and having to hopefully get out of this place. But my commitment is to support these folks who so generously come on our show. But Carolina, the value that you bring is remarkable. So I want to encourage folks to take advantage and show their appreciation. I want to thank you for being here. I'm going to wrap up the show after Andrea says a few words, just with sort of an overall thought that I want you to take away. That is my takeaway from what Carolina shared and what Andrea shared today on the show. But Andrea, I want to give you a chance to express your gratitude as well, because I know that it speaks for yourself.
Absolutely adore Carolina, and I just wanted to say thank you so much for all that you do. And I gifted a friend one of your rituals, and she just loved all of it, everything. It just opened up some blocks for her too to get things rolling. And I completely agree. Carolina, you're just a wonderful bruja, woman, everything. I adore you. And yes, please support the people who really are genuinely doing some work that goes more to the core of supporting the earth, supporting different cultures, supporting indigenous culture, supporting people who are genuine and real. So that's, for me, that's you, Carolina. Thank you.
So what I'm going to say as we leave, that I just knocked myself out of the room. I suck at doing this control panel thing while I'm talking. So what I want to say as we leave today is that it's really so important that the topic of psychic vampirism isn't just so that we could talk about vampires because it's cool and it's goth, or it isn't even to really encourage you guys to seek the services that professionals like Catalina offer. The reason that you should seek those services is because there is a very distinct, a very clear issue that goes on in our lives. I want you to think about how many times you've said that you're out of energy. That we have this concept that our mental energy, our psychic energy, our spiritual energy, our intellectual energy, you go to the gym, you work out, and you say, oh, I have no more energy. You have a difficult conversation with somebody and you say, oh, I have no more emotional energy. I have nothing left. When the truth of the matter is that energy is neither created nor destroyed. So you have limitless energy and I have limitless energy. But at those times when we feel that we're depleted, it's because somebody or something, and Catalina can help with that as well, whether it's a person or a situation that's sucking that energy from you, that's depleting you, it's pulling you out of the present moment. In the present moment, you have all the energy you need. You have the power, because in the present moment, you are in touch with and have reclaimed your power. So reach out and allow us to reconnect you to your source, to reconnect you to that power that gets taken away in colonialism, that gets taken away in systemic racism, that gets taken away in gender bias or every other kind of bias, transphobia and orientation bias, homophobia, and all of those things. And at the end of every show, we ask you to remember to stay in the moment, because that's where the power is. To reconnect with that opportunity for the abundance, for the flow, whatever you want to call it, to be able to manifest in your lives. And allow those, when you don't have the energy to go any further, when you don't feel like you've got the energy, allow those who've made it their commitment and their life's work to support you, to be there for you, to have your back, to hold you up when you feel like you can't stand. And always remember, my friends, the best is yet to come. We'll look forward to talking to you in 2 weeks for this show. Next week, I'll see you with the Holistic Mystic. This is Dr. John Michael Salvato, and on behalf of my co-host, Andrea, and our beautiful guest, Catalina, I want to send you all our love, our appreciation, and thank you for liking and sharing. Have a great one.